I probably shouldn't sing a silly song at the start of this podcast because it's about human sacrifice. Is that is that voice serious enough? If I do it, can't keep singing like that. Welcome back to the Hotbox Studios. Welcome back to the Multiverse. I don't know why I feel so compelled to do an episode about this, but I find this shit absolutely fascinating. And I know I shouldn't find it so goddamn interesting because it is pretty horrific. And I guess I don't feel like it's so far removed from my life and my time that it's easy for me to forget that there are humans, a whole lot of human beings that had to go through the fucking terror that I'm going to talk about. And that does make me feel a little guilty for being so damn interested in it. But it's so far removed from my life that it feels like it's just a movie. When I hear about it, I get these amazing images in my head. Ever since I was a kid, I was fascinated by the idea of this whole continent of people, well, I guess two continents of people, that did not know about all the other people around the world. And there were other people around the world that didn't know about everybody else as well, isolated groups. But if you lived in Europe or Africa or the Middle East or China, that area, Asia, that's the word I'm looking for. In that time, you would have known mostly that there were other parts of the world out there, that it was, a bigger globe than just your little area. But I wonder what it felt like to live as a Native American in North or South America. I've always been especially fascinated with Central and South America, with those, with the Aztecs and the Incas and Mayans and the Olmecs. The Olmecs, I should do like a whole thing just on the Olmecs because they're so damn interesting. But I'm not going to go off on that. I've always been so fascinated by those cultures and the idea that they built these amazing pyramids. Like, Native Americans in North America are also very interesting. I mean, I wish we had more. We barely have any of their history. That's a fucking tragedy because we barely know, compared to other societies, we barely know anything about Native Americans. And the history, all of the history that must have taken place, that did take place over all those, the thousands of years. I don't know. I should be better educated on this, but I don't know how many thousands of years that Native Americans have been in North and South America. But all of the wars that would have happened and the amazing accomplishments and stuff we'll just never know about and the experiences that they had, all this stuff we'll never hear about. There must have been so much damn stuff that's just forever fucking lost, which is such a goddamn tragedy. But I guess we have a little bit more to go on as far as like at least the structures of people that lived in South America. They still uncover hidden temples and stuff in the fucking jungles, in the rainforest all the time. They're still finding stuff that's been, local native people that live in the rainforest and stuff probably know about this stuff much better than we do. But every now and again, I guess somebody that writes about it in a magazine, somebody from our style of civilization finds out about it, and then we all get to know about it. But they're constantly finding stuff that's so hidden by the rainforest just growing back up over all these years that we don't even know it's there. There's all these structures throughout Central and South America that are incredible. And some are, we can tell how they put them together, and it's not, it's really cool but not amazing. But some of them, and that'll have to be a whole different podcast talking about some of the stuff you find up on the top of mountains. Like, just like we don't know how they built the Great Pyramids in Egypt, we also don't know how the hell they built these perfect structures on the top of mountains with a society that they claim didn't even have the wheel. And how the fuck they did this amazing stuff that we have trouble replicating today. There's all this history that's, oh, I'm about to rhyme and I didn't mean to, but there's all this history that is a mystery that um, that I really wish we knew more about. But it's kind of cool having some mysteries left, I guess. We'll still keep working at it, trying to figure out. I say we'll keep doing it as if I'm doing that, but somebody will. But growing up, being so interested in that stuff, one of the things that always interested me the most was the idea of human sacrifice. It terrified me. And I always found like the most terrifying stuff, I guess, the most interesting when I was a kid. I don't know, part of my ape brain being like, learn about this danger as much as you can so no one ever takes you up on top of a pyramid and kills you. You know, that's why I took shows about Bigfoot a bit too seriously as well. Like, okay, learn from this. So when you see Bigfoot in the forest, he doesn't kill you, he just scares you away. But I would watch these History Channel documentaries and all this other stuff, rent stuff from the library about these mass human sacrifices. And it wasn't until really when I started listening to Graham Hancock on different podcasts and reading his books and then researching it more from there, where I started to hear these amazing stories about the scale of this stuff. When I was a kid, I thought it was like one person a year that they would sacrifice to appease the god. I didn't know that we're talking about up to 80,400 people at the reconsecration of one of the pyramids in the Aztec Empire. If that number is correct, 80,400 people sacrificed over a 4-day period. Supposedly lined up, from what I remember from listening to Graham Hancock talk about it, this was all a sacrifice to a god who I can't really pronounce the name very well. Don't have it right in front of me, but Hummingbird was basically his name. So it was this deity that the priests, I suppose, were in contact with, they claimed, that told them to do all this stuff. That told them to sacrifice 80,400 people for the I can't say that damn word, reconsecration of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan, I think. That's disgusting and terrifying and amazing, and it's so bizarre, so removed from what I know in my life that I can't even wrap my head around how a society is so fucked up. And that's not like, some people think you can't say anything bad about minority groups that have suffered all these fucking terrible tragedies at our hands, basically. But the Aztecs' neighbors hated them. They were insane. So this one particular group of Native Americans in South America were fucking psychotic. At this point, at least. For at least this little while, they were goddamn insane. And they were starting wars with their neighbors just to get people to sacrifice to this god. And so finding out, at this age that we're not talking about a few people a year sacrificed, that we're talking about thousands of people a year sacrificed, and sometimes tens of thousands in a few days. Can you imagine what the fuck that must have been like? How horrific that was? And this was a few years before Columbus landed in the Caribbean, and then all of that shit started. And people even worse than the Aztecs came over to South America and killed a whole lot more people than the Aztecs ever did. I mean, it doesn't take away from how horrific the Aztecs were, but this was a few years before things really went crazy. But it was crazy enough in the Aztec Empire, just a few years before this. They were living in South America with no knowledge that there were people all over the rest of the world, with no fucking knowledge that there were all these European cities and all of these huge groups of people in Africa with their own empires, people in the Middle East and Asia with their own empires. Massive amounts of people. And these people in South America had no idea. Their world was just this, basically a rainforest world where they carved out temples and built amazing structures. And they lived in a world so bizarre and so alien to my brain that it's like, that's why it burned into my memory as a kid. Because it's so goddamn bizarre. The thought of that. I wish that I could get in a damn time machine and go back and just from a distance watch some of this stuff take place. As horrific as it would be, and I'd probably get killed by a panther in the jungle. So it wouldn't really be worth it. But to get in a time machine, maybe one that, is like a protective thing where no one can see me and I'm just kind of hidden and I'm just kind of watching everything, but I'm not physically there, maybe. Maybe someone can work that sort of time machine out. I just got kind of a window into that time. That would be much safer, and I would enjoy that. So then I could go back and from a distance watch as 4 lines of 20,000 people going in every fucking direction, north, south, east, and west, stretching out. That must be miles, right? 20,000 people? It's got to be. There's several miles of people stretched out in every direction, just waiting to be sacrificed? How the fuck do you scare 80,000 people, or just the 20,000 people that you have right there with you in the line that you're in? How does an empire scare all of you so badly that I really don't understand that many people just waiting to walk up to their deaths. Or if there must have been people that tried to run away. But if only 1 or 2 people do it at a time, that's not going to fucking work. I can't imagine what the Aztecs must have done to people, or what they must have threatened to get them to... I'm going to check that this is even recording. Thank God it is. What they could have done to people, or threatened to people, to keep them from just breaking out and attacking the shit out of them. How many soldiers did they have? I have no idea. But God, maybe at that point, at the end of these wars, after years of hiding from the Aztecs and trying not to get fucking killed by them, you just give up. And I know that a lot of people were sacrificed that were willing participants, I guess, that were chosen for that when they were young, maybe. And that it was from the society that was doing the sacrificing. But this 80,000 people, these were prisoners of war. And they were fucking lined up in 4 different groups, marched up there. And one by one, well, actually, I think they had several tables at a time set up so they could do this quite quickly. So I'm going to read real quick a description from Wikipedia, which I love. Wikipedia got me through college, everyone. I made up sources and claimed those. I can't lose my degree, right? At this point, once I have it, I have it. I think so. But let's see, let's go down here to the sacrifice ritual. Now, I don't know if this is exactly how it went with the 80,000, because this is a more generalized description of the sacrifices. But this is how the shit went down. I think it was 4 at a time. They might have had 4 tables set up. I'm not sure. But here's from Wikipedia. Quote, most of the sacrificial rituals took more than 2 people to perform. In the usual procedure of the ritual, the sacrifice would be taken to the top of the temple. The sacrifice would then be laid on a stone slab by 4 priests, and his or her abdomen would be sliced open by a 5th priest with a ceremonial knife made of flint. The cut was made in the abdomen and went through the diaphragm. Jesus fucking Christ. Ugh. The priest would grab the heart and tear it out, still beating. It would be placed in a bowl held by a statue of the honored god, and the body thrown down the temple stairs. The body would land on a terrace at the base of the pyramid, called an apitlatl? Yeah, something like that. Apitlatl. I would like to point out here, how do you throw a body all the way down the temple steps? Wouldn't it stop? Probably. Oh, I wonder if they're so steep that a body really just keeps fucking rolling? That's ridiculous. You'd think it would just stop and then someone would have to run down and kick it the rest of the way. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to try to stop laughing about that. Before and during the killing, priest and audience... Oh, this is... Okay, I got to stop laughing. This is horrific. Before and during the killing, priests and audience members stabbed, pierced, and bled themselves as auto-sacrifice. So as the fucking... Oh, man. You must just think you're in hell. If you're one of these prisoners of war, you already think that you're in the worst possible thing that you could be in because you know you've been captured by the Aztecs and they're going to sacrifice you. But then there's no way you knew that this shit would be going on. That you would get there, you'd get to the bottom of the temple. God, that fucking slow wait. You're moving up one at a time over hours, over days, over fucking days. Man, every Aztec person that had a hand in all this stuff has got a whole lot of... they're going to have to live a whole lot more lives, incarnations, to make up for that shit. But you get to the bottom of the temple, and it's about to be your turn to be marched up the steps, and you look around, and these crazy motherfuckers are stabbing themselves. They're stabbing themselves in the stomach and shit, and in the arms and legs, making themselves bleed all over the place. I'm gonna, in a few minutes, I'm gonna get to why exactly they acted like this. And this, I think, is the most fascinating part. But I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But you get to the bottom of the fucking pyramid, and these crazy assholes are stabbing the shit out of themselves. While, let's see, hymns, whistles, and spectacular costume dances and percussive music marked different phases of the rite. So people are going nuts. They're stabbing themselves as they prepare to kill you. And then after you're dead, after they do the horrific shit of cutting out your still beating heart, this hummingbird dude was an asshole. The body parts would then be disposed of. This is back to the Wikipedia article. The body parts would then be disposed of. The viscera, I don't know what that means. I'm going to guess that the viscera means... Let's see, what does visceral mean? I know that word, or I guess I know of it. The viscera fed the animals in the zoo. That's... Come on. Fuck you. That's ridiculous. The bleeding head was placed on display in the whatever. Actually, going back to the feeding the animals in the zoo thing, it's kind of practical if you think about it, as fucked up as it is. Because usually this stuff would happen in times of, like, famine or just general problems, I guess. When there usually wasn't enough food, that was always a fucking problem. So if you have animals in... Well, just don't have a zoo, you idiots. They had a zoo? These people had zoos? What do you mean, these people? But Aztecs... I did not know that Aztecs had zoos. That's weird. I thought that was, like, just a European thing. That then spread around the world. But anyway, the viscera fed the animals in the zoo. The bleeding head was placed on display in the thing I couldn't pronounce. Not all the skulls in the Zombitlis were victims of sacrifice. In the Annales de Tataleco, it is described that during the siege of Tlatekalo by the Spaniards, they're just going to keep saying that word, so I'm going to skip down. Other kinds of human sacrifice, which paid tribute to the various deities, approached the victims differently. The victim could be shot with arrows, in which the draining blood represented the cool rains of spring. You know, you can just drop water on the ground. There were there were Native Americans in North America that just dropped water on the ground. And you guys are dropping blood on the ground. You should stop. Figure out a different way. They can die in unequal fighting, gladiatorial sacrifice. And what is up with humans and wanting to watch people fight in unequal fights? Like, okay, gladiator in the Colosseum, you have defeated the dude with the sword. Now you get to fight two tigers. Like, what the fuck? I really... There's got to be something that... I don't know what the fuck has changed society where we don't do stuff like that anymore and they used to. We do some horrific stuff. But society would really have to fall apart for people to start doing that sort of shit. But people would be sacrificed as a result of the Mesoamerican ball game, burned to honor the fire god, flayed after being sacrificed, or drowned. Oh, man. That's fucked up. Now, the most interesting part of all this, in my opinion, the thing I wanted to get to, was the fact, and they don't tell you this shit as kids. When you're a kid, they don't tell you anything about this. Sorry, I took a sip of my BL. They don't tell you that the priests in the Aztec Empire that were doing these sacrifices, first, they don't tell you about all the crazy motherfuckers stabbing themselves as 80,000 people get sacrificed on top of a goddamn pyramid by torchlight and shit, probably, or sunlight, I guess. I don't know if they did it. I guess they did it during the day. Probably went into the night. But anyway, what was I saying exactly? I forgot. When I do that, I just pause this thing now. Okay, back. The reason that these people were doing all of this crazy fucking shit, going around the rest of... Oh, this shows my ignorance here. The Aztecs in South America or Central America? They were going around whichever America they're from. I feel very stupid for not knowing that. But they were going around capturing all these people for sacrifice to appease the hummingbird god and all the other gods because their priests were on something that I think is actually quite cool. And it was disappointing, I would say, to find out that something that I think is pretty cool could cause something so goddamn horrific. And that pretty cool something, psychedelic mushrooms. Now, I'm going to save my experiences with that for another podcast. But let's just say I've seen the good and the bad side of mushrooms, the beautiful nature of it, the connection to the universe. It feels like the life that you're living, your normal life, is totally false when you get a good dose of mushrooms. You feel like you basically feel like, in my opinion, I'm going to put it in a way that I'd like to put it, you feel like an android that has been programmed to think a certain way, programmed to believe all these lies, and then one day somebody just switches it off. It's not really lies, but just that your true nature has been dulled down. And some people say that's because if you were really experiencing all the stuff that mushrooms allow you to experience, if you're experiencing that all the time, you never get anything done. That's probably true. You would spend a whole lot of time, when you're supposed to be cutting down a tree to build a shelter, you'd be staring at it, thinking about what it must look like from the top and how old it is. And the fact, you know what's really weird is the fact that plants have evolution as well. They have like parents and shit. You can trace like a tree's genealogy. That's weird. But anyway, so I've seen the great side of mushrooms. Also seen when taking a bit too much that it can be pretty damn horrific. Not horrific. Well, I guess yes, it fucking can be horrific because that's where we're going with the sacrifices. But in my opinion, it wasn't horrific. It was just supremely uncomfortable. In the few times where things have gone, well, like not few times. It's been 2 times where things have gone poorly. And now the idea that these priests were, I guess they were taking way beyond what Terence McKenna even called the heroic dose. I've never approached what's called the heroic dose. 3.5 grams is the most I've ever done. If my mom and dad hear this, they're just going to have to deal with the fact that I want to be honest about this stuff. But an eighth of mushrooms is the most that I've ever eaten, and that's given me both the horrific shit and the fantastic shit. I don't really know what difference. Maybe one was just stronger than the other and took me over the edge. Don't fucking know. But what is called the heroic dose by Terence McKenna, other people like him. Terence McKenna, I guess he coined this theory or this term, but the stoned ape theory, that human evolution owes a great deal to our early ancestors, even pre-humans, Homo sapiens, but all of our direct ancestors back, not all of them, but at some point when we started to become, we started to eat mushrooms, this is the theory, that mushrooms became a large source of food for early man at some point. I really should know more about it. But that created like this artistic ability and could have had a role in developing language and developing the brain and better eyesight and all sorts of stuff. And there is some scientific backing to all this theory. I don't know like how accepted it would be by straight-laced dudes that have never done mushrooms, but a heroic dose, 5 grams, I can't fucking imagine that. I don't want to imagine that. I picture your body gets so nauseous from that, or at least mine would, that you just kind of zonk out physically. And you just let your mind go. I imagine it's not like mushrooms. Well, what I've heard with DMT, never done it, but what I've heard with DMT is that if you just smoke a little bit, then you just get, weird geometric shapes and stuff. Like everything has these like hard shapes to it. Looks really damn interesting. But that if you keep taking these big hits of DMT, Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan said like 4 hits, I believe it is, 4 big deep inhalations of DMT, then it's womp, 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 and you're in the cloud world. And it's a completely different experience. It's not like eating a half-eighth of mushrooms and sitting in a room and being like, oh, this room looks really interesting. It's like you're in a different fucking universe. Some people believe your mind really is in a different fucking dimension when you do that, when you smoke DMT. I have no idea. Never done it. But it is pretty damn interesting. But with mushrooms, when you take the heroic dose of 5 grams, that's supposed to put you over the fucking moon. I've heard of people taking a full quarter and not even being able to stand up off the ground and they were just sick the whole time. That sounds awful. So I don't know how much the Aztec priests were eating, but you don't start sacrificing 80,000 fucking people based on like an eighth. You don't need an eighth and then stop from looking at the flowers that you're putting in your hair and decide that you're going to kill everybody you fucking captured a week ago. That doesn't fucking happen. So these dudes must have been eating so many goddamn mushrooms that they weren't even in this goddamn world anymore. So I'm going to read a little thing here from Wikipedia again. And this describes the Aztec use of mushrooms. So basically what I'm saying with mushrooms, I guess, is don't go crazy with them. Don't have a religion based on human sacrifice, and you'll probably be fine. But it's just fascinating to me, the idea that there were people totally removed from the rest of the world that were committing these insane sacrifices while they were tripping on mushrooms. Like, mushrooms can give you such a clarity of mind, but can also cloud up your mind so much. It's unbelievable. And it's all based on if you let your mind spiral downward or upward. It's either going to go down or it's going to keep rising up. And it really can depend on just how you think about it. It can depend on if you're thinking, wow, this is incredible that my mind can think, experience this, that I can feel this way and feel so connected. Or you can freak the fuck out, be like, I can't believe I feel this way. It's going to last another 6 hours. And all of a sudden, you're having a terrible trip. I've had trips where the line between terror and pure joy was so thin, it was minute to minute, where I was feeling scared to death of dying and picking apart my relationships in my head 1 minute, and then the next minute I'm sitting there staring at a star and feeling so connected to it and feeling that it's real for the first time. And that roller coaster, man, that's fucking exhausting when you have a true trip. That's a religious experience, man. So this is from Wikipedia. Let's see, they called psilocybin mushrooms. That word, that phrase right there is so beautiful. Psilocybin mushrooms. Mushrooms I could deal without, but psilocybin. Psilocybin is the best word ever. But they called it Teonanacatl. Teonanacatl. Literally, God mushroom. So this is from Wikipedia. Literally, God mushroom. Compound of the words Teo, God, and Nanacatl, mushroom. The psilocybe genus of mushroom, the psilocybe genus of mushroom has a long history of use within Mesoamerica. The members of the Aztec upper class would often take mushrooms at festivals and other large gatherings. According to Fernando Alvarado, why does everyone's name have to be ridiculously hard for me to say? According to Fernando, it was often a difficult task to procure mushrooms. They were quite costly as well as very difficult to locate, requiring all-night searches. Oh, it took you all night. Sometimes it takes us months, but it took you all night. Both Fray Bernardino de Sahagún and Fray Motolinha describe the use of the mushrooms. The Aztecs would drink chocolate. I think this is great. They knew what the fuck they were doing. They must have tripped all the time because they knew what the fuck was up. The Aztecs would drink chocolate. You're already doing great. And eat the mushrooms with honey. That's genius. That's a great idea. Those partaking in the mushroom ceremonies would fast before ingesting the sacrament. That's exactly right. The act of taking mushrooms is known as Manonanakahuia, meaning to mushroom oneself. That's fantastic. Here's a quote describing it. At the very first, mushrooms had been served. They ate no more food. They only drank chocolate during the night. And they ate the mushrooms with honey. When the mushrooms took effect on them, then they danced, then they wept. See? That's what the fuck I'm talking about. 1 minute you're dancing, then you're fucking crying. I can't... That's just... it's not over, but I just got blown away by just that little sentence. At the very first, mushrooms had been served. They ate no more food. They only drank chocolate during the night. And they ate the mushrooms with honey. When the mushrooms took effect on them, then they danced, then they wept. But some, while still in command of their senses, entered and sat there by the house on their seats. They did no more, but only sat there nodding. They were in a good place. They were in the good plateau. Some written observations under the influence of the doctrine of Catholicism account the use of the mushrooms among the Montezumanic people. Allegedly, during the emperor's coronation ceremony, many prisoners were sacrificed, had their flesh eaten, and their hearts removed. Those who were invited guests to the feast ate mushrooms, which Diego Duran describes as causing those who ate them to go insane and many to take their own lives. Yeah, I imagine if you go to a party and you are tripping your fucking ass off and you eat another human being, you just might kill yourself when you start to come down and realize what the fuck you just did. So basically, this has been one long PSA telling you not to eat mushrooms and start a crazy cult. Don't eat mushrooms and start a crazy cult, kids. So thanks for listening. That's all I'm going to talk about, really. I just thought that was goddamn fascinating. People in South America eating a bunch of fucking mushrooms and killing so many people that their pyramids were covered in human blood. That's planet Earth in 1485, I think it was. That's planet Earth. Not very long ago at all. So, thanks for listening to episode 3 of Welcome to the Multiverse. I'm sorry if you got too grossed out. I'm going to pick a song here and then take us out. Thanks for listening.